Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Mayor of the Borough of Bracknell Forest, Councillor Ash Merry.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this first hybrid council meeting. Please note that I am waiving the requirement within the council procedure rules which require members to stand when addressing the meeting. Please remain seated. The meeting is being recorded. There is a technical issue, so it's not being live streamed, but we do have colleagues joining us virtually. Before I open the meeting, I'd like to invite my chaplain to say a prayer. Welcome, Reverend Malcolm Chalmers.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me all right.
We can indeed. Thanks, Reverend Chalmers.
Thank you. Well, this past week, as we know, was Holy Week in the Christian liturgical calendar, and Good Friday commemorating the crucifixion of Jesus also, as it happens, coincided with the start of the Jewish festival of Passover. And it was a special day of prayer and festivities for thousands of Christian and Jewish citizens in the United Kingdom. The third Abrahamic faith, Islam, is also in the midst of Ramadan, making an unusual treble of these three great monotheistic religions celebrating major festivals on the same day. And this festive hat trick last occurred over 30 years ago. Passover for the Jewish people commemorates the exodus of the ancient Israelites from slavery in Egypt. And Moses famously told Pharaoh, the leader of ancient people, to let my people go. This story has inspired historic struggles for freedom throughout the ages, including Martin Luther King and the campaign for civil rights in the Black community of America. Passover is an 8-day festival featuring a ritual meal or Seder at the start, and surveys show that attending a Passover Seder is the most popular Jewish ritual observed by 74% of Jewish people. At this meal, bitter herbs are eaten to symbolize the hardship of slavery, as well as unleavened bread or matzah, because the Israelites did not have enough time for the dough to rise in their rush to leave Egypt. The story of the Exodus is told, and children are encouraged to ask questions, and the importance of freedom is an overriding theme. The Passover Seder is commonly thought to have been Jesus' Last Supper, and Judaism and Christianity are theologically and historically intertwined. One Pope, John Paul II, called Jesus elder brother. However, the relationship has not always been quite so rosy. For hundreds of years, Christians blamed Jews for the murder of Jesus, which sparked attacks on Jewish communities. And these attacks often became particularly venomous in the run-up to the festival of Easter. In the Middle Ages, Jews were falsely accused of killing Christian children and using the blood to make their unleavened bread for Passover. And the blood libel was invented in England in 1144 and exported all over the world, which led to the persecution of Jewish communities at that time. If you walk around London, there are signs of the Jewish community of this era, such as the street Old Jewry in the city and the Domus Conversorum in Holborn, which was a house for Jews who converted to Christianity. After prolonged victimization, the Jews were expelled in 1290 and only resettled in Britain 350 years later. And so if we fast forward to today, there are positive ties between faith communities in the United Kingdom, our community of Bracknell included in that, and we talk to each other, undertake joint projects and meet as friends. This takes time, patience and hard work, which we share much in common of and also respect our differences. The three festivals taking place from Good Friday onwards all feature prayer and reflection, as well as gatherings of families and communities, particularly welcome after the last 2 years of COVID-induced restrictions. One of the other recurring themes of all these three festivals is food. Once joked that Jewish festivals could not be anything but having great food. Whilst the quip is an exaggeration based on perhaps different events in Jewish history, Jews will eat special foods on Passover, such as unleavened bread. In the meantime, no Easter is complete for Christians without the traditional chocolate eggs, whilst Muslims are enjoying their iftar meals at the end of each long day of fasting. At the Seder, Jews will rejoice in the freedom won by their ancestors following slavery in Egypt. Jews symbolically lean on their chairs to reenact that freedom. Freedom is hard won and easily lost. In Britain, we're indeed fortunate to enjoy freedom of speech and religion, whereas in so many countries these are restricted. Russia's brutal invasion of the Ukraine is a sharp reminder of how freedom can be removed abruptly and without legitimacy. This past weekend, the charity, the Council of Christians and Jews, encouraged people to leave an empty chair at their festive tables as a reminder of how many people around the world lack basic freedom. As we gathered together this past weekend for the first time since 2019, all those celebrating a religious festival could rejoice in the occasion and be thankful for our liberty above all else. And so a prayer for us all at this time, whatever our historic religious backgrounds. Loving Father, we bring before you our troubled world, asking that you will bring that peace which the world cannot give and which passes all understanding. Help us to live our lives as brothers and sisters who genuinely care for each other and your creation, regardless of our religious, political, or racial backgrounds. Bless all peacemakers and agencies who work to bring relief to those who suffer. Lord, never let us take our freedom for granted, and may we stand up for those whose freedom is threatened in any way. May we, the elected representatives of our community, take to heart the servant leadership you advocate, and may our town and borough reflect the freedom and peace we would wish for all our community. And so teach us, good Lord, to serve you as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labour and not to ask for any reward, save that of knowing that we do your will. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. As always, very informative, pertinent and relevant. And yes, I think we're all thinking of people in Ukraine and how we must appreciate our liberty and our freedom. Thank you so much, Malcolm, for starting our meeting off so well. Now to the first item on the agenda. Are there any apologies for absence?
Madam Mayor, I've received apologies from Councillors Bandari, Mrs Ingham, Councillor Leake, Councillor Mrs Mackenzie and Councillor Neal.
Councillors joining remotely, please turn on your microphone only and state that you are present when the Chief Executive calls your name, and anyone who does not respond will be recorded as giving their apologies.
Councillor Bettison.
Present.
Councillor Bidwell.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Brunel Walker.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Hamilton.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Hayes.
Present.
Councillor Ms Hayes.
Present.
Councillor Kirk.
Present.
Councillor Mossam.
Present.
Councillor Skinner.
Present.
And Councillor Wade.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Agenda. Councillor Virgo.
Wasn't on the list.
That's because you're here.
You're here. Well spotted, Councillor Virgo. Item 2 is to recommend for approval as a correct record the minutes of the two council meetings held on the 23rd and 24th of February 2022. Before I ask Councillor Bettison to second the motion, please indicate by raising your hand if you have an issue with the accuracy. Thank you. Nobody is indicating they have an issue. So, Councillor Bettison, are you happy to second the minutes as a correct record?
Very happy to second those minutes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bettison. Those are agreed. The full text for declaration of interest is set out on the agenda at item 3. If any councillor has a disclosable pecuniary interest or an affected interest to declare, please indicate by raising your hand and I will come to you in turn. Thank you. There are no interests indicated. I'd now like to welcome Maria Sabi from Fujitsu and Ian Ferguson from Partnerships for Better Business to provide the meeting with a brief presentation covering progress of the Business Improvement District.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for inviting us to your meeting. We have prepared a short presentation to offer you an overview of the achievements of the Business Improvement District to date. Plus, we would like to share with you in-flight projects and some projects in the pipeline. So I think my colleague Ian Ferguson from PFBB, the BID's strategic partner, is going to share his screen. And we will move through this at pace in case any of you would like to ask us any questions. Thank you, Ian. Are you happy to move us on? So this slide is really, and the next slide, just to give you an update as to who is on the Bracknell bid board. We have representation from many different businesses and different industries, and importantly, different size businesses. Thank you, Ian. It's also prudent for me to mention that the bid continues to work with Partnerships for Better Businesses to manage and deliver the projects for and on behalf of the bid. PFBB have extensive experience of bids. All of the bid directors are volunteers from the business community, and although we have had a steep learning curve, we're certainly not experts in bids, although we're fast becoming that way, and we do rely heavily on support from PFBB as our strategic partner. Thank you, Ian. Employed by PFBB and entirely dedicated to the Bracknell bid are Sean Griffin, our bid manager, and our recent addition of George as our project executive. And just a reminder, this is the actual bid area, the western and the southern business area. And I think many of you will have seen this before, so we will move on. And of course, a reminder of the vision that Bracknell bid has for the area, and that's to ensure that Bracknell is increasingly recognised as the place where businesses develop and grow through collaboration and investment. And the bid will generate at least 3 million of additional investment from the business community during our initial 5-year term. And we do have some very clear objectives. These were all developed following a lot of feedback and collaboration and surveys of the businesses in the area, and they are all firmly embedded in our business plan. So in high level terms, we're very focused on infrastructure, which is all about the environment for the business and the people and the services, and business growth and investment. And all of our projects and initiatives do support both of these objectives. So I'm just going to skim through for you some of the projects delivered, and we will move through this at pace. So if we can move on, Ian, we have focused very, very heavily on landscaping as a starting point. The bid went live following ballot in the middle of our lockdown. So we went live on the 1st of April 2020, where external spaces were quite important. And this is just to show some of the improvements that we've made. So this is down Mill Road and links to Longshot Lane. Thank you, Ian. And we've also looked at cutting back vegetation, maintenance, pest control. And this is again in the Longshot Lane area, and just some before and after visuals for you. And again, that was the Farley Moor Lake vegetation, and this is just some signage to start to develop a sense of community and identity for the bid area. And a couple of quick wins. A lot of the signage in the area refers to the industrial area or the industrial estate. And I know that the local authority and indeed the businesses do prefer to refer to the area as the business area. So these are a couple of very quick upgrades on signage. You may well have seen this in social media, but this is a snapshot of some collaborative working between the bid and the local authority when we upgraded the underpass and repainted the mural based on a sustainability theme. It was bid and local authority funded, and definitely a collaborative effort. And it was an area of concern for the business. The bid has also funded bicycles for the PCSOs and done a lot of work in promoting their reputation. And a few of the businesses have also been established as touchdown points for the PCSOs, and more are welcome. The bids also worked with the PCSOs and conducted joint visits, which really does get the business community much more engaged and developing relationships with the local police. Plus, we have introduced the DISC system to the area for faster provision of information to the business community. And this is a picture from the very recent 2 tidy days that we promoted and supported with community litter picking. We had some good support despite the cold, and we did manage to collect 35 bags of litter. And to support our sense of community, this is just a link to the Bracknell Bid website, which is becoming increasingly popular. And in addition, we send out a weekly e-bulletin to the business community that we represent and support. One of our key and very successful initiatives is a Meet Your Neighbour initiative. This has been going for some time now, and as you can see from some of the pictures, it's very well supported. Businesses tend to get together at different locations. We have various hosts. We've got a full programme for the rest of the year, and they have a short business breakfast and networking opportunities, and businesses can then develop relationships with each other. And we have a bigger event in plan next week. It's an evening event, and it's actually being held at Waitrose, and so far is extremely well supported. The bid has focused quite heavily on external activities, and this is just an indication of the 5K healthy walking or running route. And there's a further few slides if we move forward. And we've installed lecterns as well to help those using the routes to find their way. Plus, we have introduced some supervised lunchtime fitness sessions. We've had 5, reasonably well supported despite the cold, and we are planning to do further, or to host further sessions in the spring, which we will promote via our newsletter. And these are just some very quick visuals to show some of the quick wins where we've removed graffiti and also replaced some older benches. It just visually lifts the area. We've also promoted defibrillators. The bid has installed 4, and you can see pictures of the defibrillators being launched. And in addition, we have hosted some awareness sessions, and we've also, through raising awareness and communication with the community, we've also encouraged other businesses to put their defibrillators in external locations to make them more accessible and more widely available. And we have a map on our website to show the community where the defibrillators are located. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Maria. Well, as Maria said kindly earlier, PFPB has got experience of delivering business benefits through business improvement districts over the last 15 years plus since they started, and creating places where businesses want to invest. And despite the fact that the bid proposal for Bracknell was developed pre-COVID, and the way in which it was put together allows us to deliver benefits for businesses which are relevant to today and the future, taking account of the new ways of working and the new challenges faced by businesses in this area. So I want to go through just quickly a few projects that are currently being worked up and considered for the future. So thinking about ways of getting to work and providing a good EV charging infrastructure is one of those projects. The aim is to provide EV charging capacity across businesses across the business southern and western areas. We also want to encourage more people to walk in and around the area, and creating a good wayfinding scheme to make it more navigable, complementing the wayfinding scheme being developed for the town centre, and making sure there's good connectivity between the area and the town centre itself. Lighting as well, in parts it's not so good, and therefore making sure that people feel safe even on those perhaps dark winter evenings in some of the pedestrian only areas is really important. CCTV and ANPR coverage as well, although crime is not particularly a real issue for the area. We want to keep it that way, and we want to make sure that people feel safe just as much as being safe. And as Maria mentioned earlier, the DISC scheme enables businesses to share concerns, suspicions and issues between them on a real-time basis. Providing that space for mental well-being as well is increasingly important, as people want a reason to come back to the office, and they want a space to be able to relax and possibly even work in the open air, and even potentially play or keep fit. And therefore we're developing a series of pocket parks across the area. These will have information panels about the environment, and one of the hidden gems of the southern area is the Wild Ridings Copse, which is actually a designated ancient woodland. Benefits for the people who work in the area is also seen as a really important aspect to encouraging people to stay working with businesses in Bracknell, and therefore developing this loyalty scheme, which is going to be launched soon, has a variety of discounts. So we're looking also to work with businesses indeed within Bracknell Town Centre, but also encouraging more local trading between businesses within the bid area. As Maria mentioned, building on the success of the business breakfasts, we're encouraging local businesses to get to know each other better through various events. And the Know Your Neighbour event, actually, which is at the end of this month, being held at Waitrose, actually coincides with the 50th anniversary of Waitrose being in Bracknell. And Future projects coming through, digital connectivity, we can't take it for granted in Bracknell. To retain its position as an area recognised for its IT and communications businesses, we need to make sure that all businesses have got super fast broadband connection, and so that we're working with the infrastructure providers to make sure that happens. With reduced numbers of people working in office-based businesses now, the viability of independent shuttle bus services, which were run by a number of businesses in the area, starts to become questionable. So we're looking at a cost-effective shared shuttle bus solution. Western Road, a key road through the area. We want to make sure that the appearance of that reflects the quality and the values of the businesses in the bid area. So we're looking at how we can actually upgrade, improve and smarten it up. And that applies also to the long shot lane area where the recycling centre is, but also a very important cluster of small and medium-sized businesses. As I said before, the connectivity to the town centre is really important, and therefore things like more sustainable transport to get in and around the area between the railway station, bus station and the area, and possibly even local energy production is something that we're looking at. And to help that connectivity as well, improve pedestrian crossings, or actually creating pedestrian crossings across what is actually quite a disconnect with wide and fast roads between the town centre and the bid area. And finally, making sure that Bracknell remains as an attractive place to invest for the future by showcasing the area as a great place to work, set up a business and invest. Back to you, Maria.
Thank you, Ian. Just a final word on financial management. If you could move us on, Ian, to our final slides. Any bid could potentially face a revenue challenge, and we are certainly, excuse me, no exception. So a bid is highly dependent on its bid levy, and it's really important to have strong working relationships between the local authority and the bid. Bid levy receipts, they're typically not uniform, and we are heavily dependent on recovery administered by the billing authority as per the bid regs and the operating agreement. So we do rely very heavily on the local authority in that respect. So how are we doing? Let's just have a look to see how we're doing. The bid has just started its third year of its first 5-year term, and so far we have collected for our first year 54.2% of our levy, which is very, very low, and in the second year we have collected 68%. Now we are working with yourselves, with Stuart and Andrew Hunter and others, and looking at the various data that we have available to us. Plus we are planning to send out further reminders to the businesses, because of course the billing for our third year has just gone out. And just as a reminder, over our 5-year period, we are looking, we potentially can generate up to 3 million for investment into the bid area. Thank you, Ian. So thank you. I'm sorry that was very rushed, but we wanted to be respectful of the time we'd been allocated, and collaborations with yourselves is so critical for us as a bid, and we hope you see us as a benefit and advantage as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria and Ian, for a very informative, and thank you very much for sticking to the times. It's much appreciated. We've got a full agenda tonight. We do want to give everyone an equal opportunity to ask one question. So if anybody has a question in the room, in the chamber, if you'd like to show your hands and I'll come to you in turn, then my Deputy Mayor Michael will go to take the questions remotely. So I can see Councillor Mrs. Mattock has her hand up. So Councillor Mrs. Mattock, please ask your question.
worried about, and it's been emphasised this week, is the use of underpasses. I live in Wild Ridings, and I worked for Boering at Ingelheim for for 22 years, and I often used to walk down there. It did entail walking through underpasses. With the events this week of somebody being attacked in an underpass, people particularly women, are very unhappy about using them. What influence are you going to make? Because many people do walk to work, you know, and use all the facilities in the local areas. Thank you.
Maria?
Yes, no, I'm happy to pick that up. So thank you for that. So I work for Fujitsu, so we're your neighbours basically, and a lot of our employees do actually use that route as well. And I know that there was an incident in that underpass potentially a year ago. So what we do is, when we have information, and particularly with the DISC system, is we do share it with the businesses, and we also speak with the businesses and help them to put in place recommendations. So for example, for Fujitsu, we spoke to our employees and we recommended a buddy system. So initially, a lot of our employees, particularly the women, I do agree with your comment on that, started to walk in pairs, and there's no reason why we can't extend that out to other businesses as well. Does that help at all?
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Temperton.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I was interested that you're going for electric vehicle charging points, essential. But can I also ask, you said about energy production. Are you encouraging solar panels as well on all the places that all the industries that you work with, please?
Maria, did you want me to pick that up?
Yes, you can pick that up, Ian.
Yeah. Obviously, energy production is going to be a key concern to businesses generally. This is very much a concept stage, but basically we'll be looking at all options, whether it be solar, wind, or anything else. Certainly there are examples of neighbourhood energy production projects as well that we'll be looking at examples which have been developed, for example, by Keele University. So we'll be looking at all options that may be available to help businesses in the area with energy.
Thank you. I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions in the chamber before? Thank you, Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Virgo, could I just ask for businesses, there was a scheme to help the connectivity to Heathrow Airport, a faster route. Is that something that you're involved in and something that you might fund or find money to expedite that idea?
As a business in the area, I have a recollection of that scheme, and I haven't picked that up from our businesses recently. I haven't actually had those conversations over the last couple of years. But what I will do, because that's quite an interesting point, what I will do is, at our next networking event, which is next week, I will start to speak with some of the businesses and gauge the interest. There must be an interest, and it's certainly something that we would be very willing and happy to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
non-car users in the borough is connectivity. And this is going to be exacerbated by the opening of Crossrail, the Elizabeth line, which will prove an attractive way of getting to or from central London from Berkshire. We're also hampered to some degree by the service provided by South Western Railway, which is currently running 2 trains an hour, taking at least 64 minutes to get from Bracknell to Waterloo and back. And we only have 2 trains an hour now with 8 carriages. So that's not a particularly attractive proposition for businesses in this area when they can get potentially from Maidenhead or Reading in less than an hour. So what can you do to encourage the government to persuade South Western Railway to provide an improved service, both in terms of the number of trains, the type of trains, and the journey time to and from Bracknell, to help businesses continue to regard Bracknell as an attractive place to base themselves? It's all well and good, and I fully support and endorse what you're doing in terms of getting people to and from the railway station or the bus station using bicycles or scooters, and that is something that I think we should very much encourage and help you promote. But once they've got to the railway station, that's the difficulty. So what is it you can do to try and improve the connectivity from Bracknell?
Do you want me to start, Ian, on this one?
Uh,
Or
yeah,
do you
yeah. Okay, you start if you like.
Okay, so clearly it's a real challenge, and we're equally very aware of this, and it's something that we did focus on prior to COVID. Now, we know that the ESDP have been working on this, and the chair of the ESDP is also a bid director. So one of the immediate actions for the bid is lobbying. I mean, bids can be very powerful, especially when they join forces with other organisations, and lobbying with the support of the business community is certainly something that we could and should do. I don't know, Ian, if you want to add anything to that, but
The only thing I would say is just adding to what you've said is this is about collaboration, and I think it's not anything that the bid can do in isolation. It is actually about working together with indeed Bracknell Forest Council and any other business organisations, and anyone that's got significant investment in this area. It's about everyone saying the same thing, because at the end of the day, the commercial case has to be made for the train operators to feel that there actually is a way, they're obviously going to get a payback on their investment in more frequent services. So I think if we all pull together and we can present that case, then the chances are that potentially the services would be improved.
Thank you. Could I go across now to Michael, my Deputy Mayor, who will now call people to speak who are joining us virtually. Over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nobody that has indicated that they have a question online, but I have a question in the room, if I may.
You may, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you both for your presentation and for joining us this evening. Why are businesses not paying their levy, and what can you do, or what can we do also to encourage businesses to pay their levy?
Thank you, and that's a very good question. I do think some of it is historic. When we sent the billing out initially, if we go back to April 2020, we were all getting to grips with the first lockdown as individuals and indeed as businesses. So I think to a very great extent, a lot of the bills sat in businesses and were perhaps unattended. I think also we have had some issues with the software that we're using. We haven't been able to send out the reminders that we would have ideally liked to have sent out. But to be fair, we needed to be very respectful to yourselves, because at the time you were all under an awful lot of pressure from UK government to support the various grants and everything else that came with the pandemic. And of course, April 2020 was the first time these bills had been sent out. Now, we are now working with Andrew Hunter, with Stuart and a couple of others, and we are addressing issues which we can't do directly. We rely heavily on you with the software, and the sooner we can send out more frequent reminders and we can get some leverage behind it, and we can have some information which is outstanding, then the bid itself can do an awful lot more. You know, once we have details of the various contacts and where their billing addresses are, because they're not always businesses. The board directors have different relationships with different businesses, and we can literally hit the phone. So I do think it's a collaborative requirement. You are absolutely right. There is so much more to be done, and we do need to get those percentages up, because the last action the board directors want to take is recovery action. So we are looking to work with you more, and that process really has started.
Thank you very much, Maria and Ian, for your time tonight. And I understand the slides are going to be circulated to councillors. So thank you so much for attending this evening. You're very welcome to stay, but I'm sure you've got other commitments. So thank you, Maria and Ian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
We
Bye.
now come to agenda item 5, which are the Mayor's announcements. Since we last met, the Civic team has had the pleasure to attend a significant number of engagements on behalf of Bracknell Forest residents and colleagues in this chamber. Slide 1, please. Thank you. My Mayoress Isabel and I attended the Bracknell Camera Club prize giving event. Although we were only scheduled to attend the first part of the evening, we were delighted to enjoy the whole event and learn an awful lot too. The club issued a challenge to the Mayor in return for a donation to my civic charities, and I carried this out last week. More at our next meeting. Thank you, Jeff and the team, for providing such a wonderful resource for friendship and improving camera skills. Next slide, please. In honour of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and the Queen's Green Canopy project, Isabel and I planted a wild tree in Bond Square with colleagues Paul Betterson, our Chief Executive, Tim Whedon, and the Lexicon team. This is a lovely addition to Bracknell Forest, and long may she grow and flourish. Next slide, please. My Mayoress and I attended the Mayor of Sandhurst, Councillor Mrs. Sheila Davenport's civic service. This was a very poignant event and was followed by the Community Awards ceremony honouring local residents for their voluntary service. Next slide, please. Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Temperton, for supporting my Challenge the Mayor initiative. The challenge was to read and sing at a mum and toddler group in Great Hollands. I'm not entirely sure who enjoyed themselves more, myself or the younger audience. Councillor Mrs. Temperton, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. I attended an event in Newbury to honour voluntary groups across Berkshire being considered for the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. The Queen's Award is the highest award given to volunteer groups, and to be nominated is itself a considerable achievement. Congratulations to all the groups being considered. Next slide, please. During the pandemic, citizenship ceremonies have been held virtually, and I have had the honour to attend many of them. I was acutely aware that becoming a British citizen was a huge milestone, and being able to properly share this with friends and family was very important to our new citizens. Working with the Democratic Services team and the Superintendent Registrar, we have held a number of Meet the Mayor opportunities at South Hill Park. New citizens have been able to have photographs with the Mayor in full regalia and to share their journeys and aspirations for the future. This has been hugely appreciated and well worth the effort and time to properly welcome our new citizens. Thank you to everyone who has made this possible, and my Mayoral Support Officer Liz for her expert camera skills. Next slide, please. Isabel and I attended the groundbreaking ceremony for the new Binfield Community and Health Hub. The development of this site is being undertaken by Osborne and will see a double height hall, multi-use meeting and activity space, GP consultation and examination rooms, and minor procedure rooms being built at the heart of the Blue Mountain site in Binfield. Chairman of Osborne, Andrew Osborne, summed it up perfectly when he said, "We're delighted to be supporting Bracknell Forest Council in delivering a sustainable, intelligent design space that will improve the lives of the local community." Next slide, please. Michael, my Deputy Mayor, attended the English Language Cafe end of term celebrations at the Open Learning Centre. This is such a wonderful resource and helps with language skills for many nationalities. Thank you to all the volunteers and organisers. Michael also attended the Bracknell and Wokingham Police Cadet Awards ceremony, and I'm sure all of us wish the successful cadets huge success in their new careers. Next slide, please. After a 2-year break, the Pride of Bracknell Awards took place at Wellington College. This was such a lovely and lively evening and a perfect opportunity to recognise some exceptional groups and people giving so much and making such a difference to others. Home Start Bracknell won the Gold Award for Charity of the Year, and its chairman, Michael, is just sitting over there and is in the chamber tonight. Well done, Home Start Bracknell, and congratulations and thank you to everyone who was nominated. Next slide, please. Isabel and I attended a celebration to recognise the 50th birthday and anniversary of the Crowthorne Good Neighbours. This wonderful organisation has been a lifeline for so many residents, not only providing transport to medical appointments, but giving them support and friendship during often very challenging times. Next slide, please. The Lexicon hosted a water extravaganza over Easter, including an interactive digital art installation, plus lots of water-themed attractions and exhibits in the town centre. Isabel and I attended the preview. These unique initiatives are so valuable to our local businesses and residents, and certainly keep Bracknell Forest in the news. I look forward to the next event. Next slide, please. I attended the swearing in of the new High Sheriff, Alka Kabardana. Alka has chosen 2 themes for her year of office: education and hidden heroes, and I'm sure we wish Alka well in this important role. Thank you to the previous High Sheriff, Willie Hartley Russell, for his considerable hard work and everything he brought to the role and his significant achievements. Next slide, please. Michael attended a performance of Shrek at South Hill Park, and as always, the performance, I understand, was truly outstanding. Next slide, please. And finally, I just want to say thank you for the incredible support Bracknell Forest residents have shown to Ukraine. In challenging times here at home, the spirit of friendship and generosity has been very evident and just demonstrates that Bracknell Forest is indeed a very special place to live and work. I am so proud to be a part of it. Thank you. We now come on to some good news stories. Councillor Barnard, I believe you have something to share.
Wonderful thing, technology. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I thought tonight would be a good opportunity just to reflect on the overall performance of our schools in the eyes of Ofsted. And I can just announce tonight, colleagues, that now 97.3% of our schools are rated good or better by Ofsted. This is a huge achievement for all our school leadership teams, and this is follows a long line of inspections from Ofsted, which results actually in all our secondary schools now being judged as good or better. And I think it's a tremendous tribute to all the hard work in our schools by the leadership teams and the whole school communities during COVID, because one of the key criteria now that makes a school good in the eyes of Ofsted is its willingness and ability to meet the needs of all children. And I thought it would be quite pertinent night to reflect on an event 25 years ago when the then, it was the committee chairman for education, Councillor Alan Ward, said that he wanted to see all schools in Bracknell Forest to be good or outstanding. And thanks to the huge amount of work in our schools, supported by the school improvement team in Bracknell Forest, I think we're well on the way, and we just wait for the Ofsted window to open for that one remaining school. But I think it's a good time to just also pay tribute to the huge amount of hard work going on in our schools even today, because they still live with COVID day to day, managing staff absences and issues with pupil cohorts. And they've been doing this for the last 2 years, and I think, just on occasions like this, we should reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Barnard. Colleagues, if you haven't spoken and you are going to be speaking, you need to press the space bar to turn on your mics to actually boot them up before you actually turn on the speak. So if anybody's planning, if you can actually press that. Thank you, Councillor Dr. Barnard. Councillor Dale Birch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I remembered where the button was. Thank you. An important part of our community is about to get even better service, and I'm talking about our elderly, mentally impaired, and of course those coming out of hospital, because on Monday the 28th of March, Heathlands actually opened its doors for the first time and admitted people for reablement services. And reablement is taking people from hospital and making it safe for them, making them feel confident to go back into their own home. There's been a steady flow of people coming in, and the good news is a steady flow going out, because the importance of intermediate care is that you stabilise and you get them confident and you put them back in to their own home. And I'll add there, that is also then joined up with our health colleagues who will go into people's homes to continue that support to make sure they remain safe. So Heathlands is now a key element of a totally integrated support mechanism for people that have health and care issues. And we're going to hear over the coming months a lot more about how health and care are working together to ensure people stay safe in their own home. And Frimley, on the same day, they began taking in patients for dementia and so on. And they're up to 10 at the moment. They'll have another 3 or 4 in by the end of this week, and they will have utilised all their beds within the next week or 2. And that's for local people. And so Heathlands is underway, everybody, and I congratulate and thank everybody that has been involved in getting it this far. And then I look forward to working with all the partners in integrating it all together. I also should mention an event that was highlighted at recent overview and scrutiny, and that is that Heatherwood Hospital. Oddly enough, the NHS and Co do like the 28th of March, because that was when that was officially given its blessing, and it's a £100 million project, elective planned care hospital with 6 operating theatres and with day surgery facilities, and their commitment that was given in a presentation that I was able to be present at was so that we could begin the task of reducing backlogs and waiting lists. So that's got to be good news for all our residents, and I look forward to the success of that brilliant new Heatherwood Hospital. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Mrs Hayes, I wonder if you could introduce a good news story. We're delighted to have Hazel Hill in the council chamber tonight with a few awards. So I wonder, Councillor Mrs Hayes, if you'd like to introduce Mrs Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to introduce the following good news. As the Environmental Portfolio Executive Councillor, it is a privilege to work with a team of officers dedicated to our residents and improving all aspects of our climate change strategy. As earlier speakers reported, sustainability and efficiency. May I therefore ask you on behalf of the Council to congratulate Hazel Hill on attaining, on behalf of Bracknell Forest Council, recognition and awards for the National Energy Efficiency, Reed Champion and Special Commendation. Hazel was not able to attain those to go and collect those awards due to ill health, but that was not what should have happened, because we recognise our work that is done by our officers, and I therefore ask you to take this forward for me and give the privilege of allowing Hazel to be recognised for the good work she is doing on behalf of our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Hayes. And can I ask councillors to all join me in giving a well-deserved round of applause for Hazel. Hazel. And we've got some awards here, and Hazel, we know how much you have done, and you know more about energy efficiency than I will never know, but your contribution to everything is hugely appreciated, and we can't thank you enough. So thank you, Hazel, for all you're doing and continue to do. Thank you. Councillor Bettison, could I come to you now, please, to share your good news story?
Thank you, Adam. Actually, Madam Mayor, given that I've now prepared slides, I've put an update on the Ukrainian refugee status for our borough. I've taken the liberty of including it as a final slide in my slide presentation. So if when convenient, I'm happy to do the executive report, and it'll flow naturally from that. But I would just like to say here and now, what a wonderful show of support we are getting from the good people of Bracknell Forest for our Ukrainian guests. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. And we now do indeed come on to the regular report of the executive at agenda item 6. And I call upon the leader of the council, Councillor Bettison, to present the report.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. And it gives me great pleasure as ever to present this executive report to everybody. Next slide, please. Thank you. One of the biggest things that's happened since we all met together as full council has been that the council has been subject to a peer review. This is a formal inspection or review by our own peers. That means a panel made up of elected members, or in fact leaders of councils, and of senior officers and at least one chief executive, visited the council back in November. This is done on behalf of central government, and it's administered by the local government association. I'm very proud to say that the peer review concluded that Bracknell Forest is an organisation that knows what it wants to do and how to do it. And a comment that they made was Bracknell Forest is performing well and is rightly proud of its achievements. Members have a clear focus on the delivery of good services in the borough and a clear set of priorities, with a golden thread from the political manifesto through to the council plan and on to service delivery. They said that we were bold but realistic, and they said that we had a can-do, well-organised, and we're positive and with a clear focus on the delivery of good services for residents. So next slide, please. There were 8 positive recommendations as to where we need to focus our attention in the immediate future. 1 to 3 were on the chief executive replacement and approach. It was rightly pointed out that this council does not replace its chief executive lightly or often, and so therefore it is a big deal for us. And so there were some words of guidance there for us. If anybody wants to read them all, they can, of course, study the recommendations that appear on our website. And then 5 recommendations 5 to 8 were about emerging from COVID and re-engaging with our residents, implementing the lessons that we've learned in new technology such as Teams, and get so that we get the best out of that. And so, Madam Mayor, I think it puts us in a good place to deal with future challenge. But of course, we know that that's not the full story, and we know that from our other inspections that we have a lot of work to do in the area of special educational needs, and indeed that work is already underway. So, Madam Mayor, a good overall piece of work there, and congratulations to all concerned. Next slide, please. Then in terms of place planning and regeneration, we have a new national bus strategy with an enhanced partnership that's been agreed with local bus operators. There's a requirement, of course, to access future funding allocations as and when they're available. And then we've also seen a new highways infrastructure and asset management plan, which sets out our future approach to long-term maintenance of these assets, which include, and it's quite a surprising set of numbers here, that we as a fairly small unitary still have 460 kilometres of highways to maintain. and 534 kilometres of footways and cycleways. Structures 193, all of which need maintenance on a regular basis and replacement eventually, and nearly 22,000 gullies that need for drainage that need to be kept clean and running well, and of course more than 14,000 lamp columns as our street furniture, and 20 kilometres of railings. So a significant amount of highways infrastructure there, all of which needs to be kept in fine fettle for the benefit of our residents and visitors. Then the Highways and Transport Capital Programme for 2022-23, that's a total programme of over £4 million that's been agreed, and 85% of that will be externally funded. If we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. And in other issues, procurement plans have been agreed for domestic abuse refuge and outreach services, environmental monitoring, and a Section 75 agreement with Frimley CCG has been extended to allow new agreement to be delivered for the Frimley ICS Integrated Care Service for 2023-24 onwards. Thank you very much indeed. And then the next slide, please, takes me on to the Ukrainian settlement in Bracknell Forest. And Madam Mayor, forgive me for not having put everything onto the slides, but I wanted the tonight's update to be slap bang up to date. And of course we are working here with a very volatile situation, and one that changes almost hourly. But the council has been working with partners closely, including right across the voluntary, community and faith sector, to prepare for and to offer a very warm welcome to people arriving from Ukraine as part of the Homes for Ukraine community sponsorship, and also on the family visa route. On Saturday, the 26th of March, the council hosted a private community engagement meeting with local Ukrainian and Russian residents who ordinarily live here now. This gave the opportunity to those already resident in the borough to share their concerns and ask any questions on the support offered, as well as giving the council a valuable insight into the type of support that new arrivals would need locally. I really valued the opportunity to be able to speak with local Ukrainian and Russian residents directly. Their strength during this difficult time is humbling and an inspiration to all residents in the borough. To date, 51 households in Bracknell Forest are linked to visa applications under the Homes for Ukraine visa scheme. They will be welcoming between them 114 guests, including 41 children. 18 guests are known to have arrived so far, with more expected over the coming days. Many more local people will have registered themselves to host guests in the next phase of the Homes for Ukraine programme, where one does not need to know the people to whom you are offering a home. The borough has also welcomed Ukrainian guests under the family visa scheme. New arrivals have joined family members living here, although it's challenging that the government can't as yet provide us with details on the numbers of people who are arriving under this visa route, or the location where they may be staying. We therefore encourage any local Ukrainian families that have welcomed family members from Ukraine to stay with them to contact us if they need support, advice or guidance on our dedicated email address or by phone. Our actions so far include establishing a web page with contact information and a range of signposting advice and guidance for anyone arriving from Ukraine or their family members. Setting up a ukraine@bracknellforest.gov.uk email address for inquiries and support via our customer service number 01344 35 2000. Publishing a guidance leaflets for hosts and Ukrainian guests to signpost practical support and a wide range of services. We have regular engagement with the local Ukrainian and Russian communities and coordination of our support with the voluntary community and faith sectors who are offering an impressive range of support themselves. There's regular engagement and support for Homes for Ukraine sponsors, including planning for events and a regular newsletter. There's safeguarding and accommodation checks on all Homes for Ukraine hosts. Welcoming all Homes for Ukraine guests with a welcome pack provided by the Kerith Church and a £200 payment to cover their immediate need for essentials as per the government guidance. Allocating a family link worker to provide a single point of contact for people arriving from Ukraine and administering the £350 thank you payment for Homes for Ukraine sponsors. We also provide a wraparound advice, guidance and support to people arriving under both visa routes to enable them to integrate into the community, including support with accessing health services, working with the clinical commissioning group, applying for school places, learning English, applying for benefits and employment, and providing housing advice and support as required. And we've been ensuring that children and adults are properly safeguarded and that their care and support needs are met. There are some challenges, and you will have heard of many of these in the national press. There's a lack of information about the number of people arriving under the family visa scheme and where they'll be staying. This means that we can't plan support and we're reliant on families contacting us to make us aware of their support needs. While the data is better for the Homes for Ukraine programme, we're not made aware of travel and arrival dates for guests, which makes planning support more difficult. We're also awaiting detailed government guidance on several issues under the Homes for Ukraine programme. And I've had 3 meetings a week on average with the new Minister for Refugees, Lord Harrington, about this. The speed at which visas are being issued is something which many hosts are contacting us with concerns about. And the difference between Homes for Ukraine and the family visa scheme in the expectations and support set out in the guidance, because they do give different benefits. But I should say, Madam Mayor, in conclusion, that the generosity and support shown by Bracknell Forest residents to those arriving from Ukraine has been and continues to be incredibly positive. We're looking forward to welcoming more new arrivals in the coming weeks and will support them as much as we can. We continue to stand with Ukraine and with all those affected. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councillor Bettison. Does any councillor have a question they'd like to ask the leader? No, in that case, thank you very much, Councillor Bettison, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7, which is the review of contract standing orders. If any councillor has a question, please indicate by raising your hand and I will come to you in turn. There are no questions, so Councillor Allen, would you like to move these recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move that the Council updates the Constitution to replace the existing contract standing orders with the version proposed or outlined in Appendix 1.
Is that seconded?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Hayden, I'm seconding the recommendation.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to say with it, Councillor Allen, at this stage to move
Just
it?
very briefly, that this is a procedural update, but the major change in it is actually that the thresholds now include the VAT, which they didn't previously.
Thing on, have you?
Yes, I have.
Have you?
Yes. It includes VAT, where previously the thresholds did not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden, do you wish to speak or reserve at this stage?
I'll reserve, please, Madam Mayor.
Does any councillor wish to speak? No. No. Councillor Hayden, do you wish to speak before we go to Councillor Allen to sum up?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'll just echo what Councillor Allen has said, so thank you.
Councillor Allen, would you like to sum up before we go to the vote?
I'm quite happy to go straight to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendations are set out on the screen. Can all those present in the chamber please indicate by raising your hand if you support the recommendations? I can't see any hands. Are there any against or any abstentions? No. Thank you. That is carried. The next item on the agenda is item 8, which is the annual report of overview and scrutiny. If any councillor has a question, please indicate by raising your hand and I will come to you in turn. No, there are no questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mrs. Temperton.
There's just one thing. I was involved in the scrutiny on flats, food collection for flats. I think that's part of this, is it? Yeah. Yeah, I think it is. It's part of the overall thing. There's lots to do it. And I would just like to say that this started in March, and we were told at the time, the people on that working group, that we would get a list of the flats that are involved. And I'd like to know if this is going to be published, the flats that did meet all the criteria to start the food collection in March. Thank you.
Councillor Angel, do you have anything to add to that?
Nothing to add, Madam Mayor, other than my understanding was it had been sent out. Well, Madam Mayor, we can make sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Templeton gets it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Angel. So, Councillor Angel, would you like to move the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's only one recommendation on page 59, and it's 2.1, that the 2021-22 annual report, the Overview and Scrutiny Commission, be adopted. If that's seconded, I would like us to add a word.
Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to second it. Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Councillor Virgo.
If I may, Madam Mayor, just to bring to members' attentions, I think we are seen, and I hope we're seen by the council, as we're all council members, as the critical friend. I know sometimes, there's a little bit of apprehension when we invite people to come and talk to us, and we examine things. But I think the general acceptance by executive members, by officers, has been astounding, in the sense of the way that things have been answered, and the preparation and the information that the Commission and its panels. Remember, there are 3 panels with the Commission, and we must welcome those. What I would like to see is, and it's open of course, is more members of the public who can come along and join us and have an input as residents when the agendas are published. So I hope somehow we try and get that message across. And if I may, just because there has been changes, as you know, we've made some changes a year or so ago, and just to highlight the difference in the work, I think, of the overview and scrutiny, it's now, if you like, for those that are going to flick their screens very quickly, we get to page 76. You'll see there that we've shown the number of meetings which have increased, I have to say, significantly in terms of the commission, which used to be meeting virtually once a quarter. Now we're virtually every month. So there's much more scrutiny going on in the council, which I think is a good thing. And if you actually look at the number of meetings of the panels, have significantly increased. And I would just like to take this opportunity to thank everybody that's involved, that's officers, members, particularly the chairman of the 3 panels and vice chairman, because there's a lot of work goes into the preparation of these meetings, and they are extremely in depth at times. So it's just to bring those to your attention, really. And I think the other thing that members should be aware of, it's the number of witnesses that we're seeing now. I mean, we've got in the papers, but in total over the year, we've had 29 officers attend, not all different ones, but they've attended different meetings. But we've had 54 external people come to us, the police, the health. And I think the way that they engage with us is very rewarding for the residents of the borough and us, because we are looking inward at ourselves, and sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable. But I have to say, members, officers, exec members have all responded well, and thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Angel. Councillor Virgo, do you wish to speak or reserve?
No, just to endorse what the chairman said, and I know also we are going back and with some reviews and checking the progress of those reviews. So we're doing quite a lot of work now, as Councillor Angel said. So thank you, Chairman.
Does anybody else wish to speak at this point? No. Councillor Angel, can I ask you to sum up then, please?
I don't think there's anything else to say, Madam Mayor, other than the recommendation is before you.
Thank you. The recommendations are set out on the screen. Can all of those present in the chamber please indicate by raising your hand if you support the recommendation? Yes, unanimous. Yes, that's unanimous, and that is carried. The next item is the Champions Annual Report, and in the order they appear in the report, I will ask each champion in turn whether they have anything to add and provide the opportunity for you to ask them questions. Councillor Wade, Small Business Champion, please indicate if you have something to add.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to present the report as it stands.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question? Councillor Mrs Temperton, you have a question.
Councillor Mary Temperton, I was interested in your report, but the bit that worried me was the green agenda bit, when it said what action taken to become net zero, half have an intention of becoming more environmentally friendly, few have a specific target or aim to achieve or net zero, and even less setting any deadline. So what can be done about this? Because it's pretty depressing.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I think it is a depressing picture. Small businesses have been suffering the challenges of COVID, and I think essentially it has just been low down on their agenda. It isn't that they're not necessarily interested, but I think at this stage they've had more challenges maintaining their own business, being capable of trading. But certainly the green agenda is high on people's lists, and And there are a lot more seminars now dealing with this, and I see small business beginning to take more interest because they recognise that they do have to respond.
Thank you. I can't see any more questions, so if we move on to Councillor Atkinson, the commuters champion. Do you have something to add, Councillor Atkinson? Have you pressed the space bar first, Councillor Atkinson? Okay.
Oh. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on a point raised by Councillor McLean earlier on the reduced frequency of peak hour services on our Waterloo to Martins Heron and Bracknell train service. You'll probably remember that pre-pandemic we had something like 3 to 4 trains an hour in the peak both ways. In South Western Railway's consultation for its proposed December 22 timetable that I referenced in my report, that would go a long way to reintroducing something closer to 3 to 4 trains an hour, both in the morning and the evening peak. I did meet with South Western Railway a couple of weeks ago to try and get an update on the progress with that timetable, but they said to me they were still waiting for a response from Department for Transport, who have to approve that. But this is really important to our commuter residents, and I'll be keeping up the pressure on South Western Railway to try and make sure that we do get something like the pre-pandemic peak hour timetable that we were used to previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. Are there any questions? No. In that case, Councillor Ms Gore, can we turn to you as the older people's champion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to present my report as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor Ms Gore. Are there any questions for Councillor Gore? No. In that case, we'll move on to the next one. Councillor Gibson, please. Voluntary sector champion. Please indicate if you have something to add.
I don't, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to commend the report.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Gibson? No. No. Thank you. There being no further questions, I would like to thank all the champions for their full reports and the questions that have been asked. The next item on the agenda is item 10, which is the Councillor Development Annual Report. If any councillor has a question, please indicate by raising your hand and I will come to you in turn. Councillor Allen, would you like to move these recommendations?
The recommendation is that the annual report be noted, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, it's Councillor Hayden. I'd like to second that motion, please.
Thank you. Councillor Hayden, do you wish to speak or reserve?
Reserve, please.
Does any councillor wish to say anything at this stage?
Yes, Madam Mayor, very briefly. Just to say that whilst it's a nice, colourful and very easy to read report, and it's only 2 pages, it does hide an awful lot of work done by Democratic Services to put on a lot of training courses for councillors, which are in the main pretty well attended. And I think it's you know, they've done an awfully good job on organising all the training that we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen. Councillor Hayden, do you wish to say anything or reserve at this point?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Hayden. Only to endorse every word that Councillor Allen has said. Thank you.
I don't think there are any questions, so Councillor Allen, for you to sum up.
The report has been noted, Madam Mayor, anyway, so.
So we're not having a vote on this one then? No, that's noted. Thank you very much. We now come on to the question item, item 11. We've received notice of 3 questions, which is set out at item 11 at the beginning of your agenda and on the screen in turn. I'd like to remind both the responder and questioner that answers and supplementary questions should arise directly from the question or the reply provided and be succinct. Councillor Mrs Temperton, are you content for us to take your question as read?
I am.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Temperton. Councillor Dr Barnard, can you please respond?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Councillor Mrs Temperton, for your question. I think the first thing I want to say is very publicly in this council chamber this evening to apologise to those families and children who we've let down in terms of the service provided in recent years for SEND provision, and also to commend those families who spoke out with eloquence and passion during the inspection process to highlight the concerns and problems they had when meeting with the service. I've thought long and hard about this report since I received it, and I think, unfortunately, Madam, I'm going to have to take a little bit of time to put some context behind my response. I think the service changes go back to about 2014, when we moved from a system of statements of special educational needs to educational health and care plans. And one of the problems, I think, as any elected member in charge of that service was that when for the first few years you're presented with data that demonstrates and shows that plans are being moved forward in a timely manner, and that actually, as Ofsted found in the inspection, that outcomes for early years and overall outcomes were good, that actually the service was moving on in a good direction. I personally became concerned about the service in 2019 for a couple of reasons. First of all, an increase in complaints being received that were being investigated, and councillors will know that last year during the course of the autumn we introduced a complaints dedicated email so we could actually try and pick those up. Well, also when I started interrogating and looking at inspection reports from neighbouring authorities to SEND, who actually share some of the partners that we work with in terms of some of the specialist assessments. So during late 2019 and early 2020, we started a process of putting together a self-evaluation framework looking at SEND outcomes and the plans and the progress that we need to make in this. And we consulted with our partners. It's become clear that although we engaged to some extent with parents and carers, we probably didn't do enough of it at the time. And during 2020, we also started working with the Schools Forum, who'd highlighted some concerns about SEND in 2019 as well, and just started moving that forward. And we came up with the SEF, that's the self-assessment framework for SEND, later 2020 and moving into 2021, where work continued. I think we should note that when Ofsted came in, one of the things they did say was that we knew what we had to do to further improve the service. And during that time, and I think the frustration for me in all of this is that we will never know, if we hadn't had the hiatus of coronavirus and COVID, whether we'd have made progress faster. I don't think we can use COVID as an excuse, but I certainly think it impacted on our ability, that sort of perfect storm, to move some of this work forward, because we were also during that time working with schools in a different way as well. So we weren't having that sort of granularity of conversations, and some of the other meetings were not taking place in the way that we wanted. So I think operationally we learned a lot through that time. And of course, as members know, not only did we put increased resource in the budget for 22-23, which was being discussed through the whole of last year, but also we put some in-year resource as well to increase the operational capacity. And I think the latest information I have is that the timescale and quality around the plans is improving. There's a 20-week timescale in which to do this, so that data is improving. But there's an interesting quirk in this, that data is reported annually. I think it's on the 19th of January. So as we make these improvements, it will be another year before we see the full impact on that. I think I should say in the context of this that we aren't the only local authority locally to struggle with the SEND inspection. Indeed, 5 of the 6 Berkshire unitaries have come back with some quite challenging inspection reports, as we have. I think the one thing that does mark us out, at least Ofsted were clear that we knew what we had to do. And I think they were very clear that it was too early what we had to do next. I think the other thing that we did during this time as well was, and it was highlighted a little bit, I think, in the peer review answer earlier, which was that we used, even in the run-up to the inspection during last year, the capacity of the council to bring additional resource to bear on this. And I think the Chief Executive commissioned some work as well in 2020 just to help us understand what we needed to do. What could have been done to prevent it? I think better performance data. And coming out of the inspection, there are two new forums in which this will be discussed. The first is the SEND Partnership Board, where it is our intention for that to be co-chaired by a senior officer, but also by a parent as well. And also more broadly, of course, the People's Directorate of Performance Board will be able to look in more granularity about the data and hopefully pick up anything if it's going wrong. I think in conclusion, at this point, I would say I am disappointed that for a council that professes to be child-centred, that we have not got this right. But I am confident that with all the steps being taken, the rework of the SEND plan to involve parents in a more co-productive format, the new performance boards that are in place, and also I think a considerable amount of work operationally in terms of understanding and structuring the SEND function in this council to better meet needs, that it won't happen again. I think the learning point from this is, like many councils early on in the process, we probably didn't fully appreciate the impact of moving from statements to education, health and care plans. And in the case of Bracknell Forest, a small unitary, we probably didn't recognise that we needed to try and do more to develop more resources internally, which is why another piece of work going on over the last 2 years has been on the school places planning, a paper that will come forward to the executive and beyond, that actually highlights where there is spare capacity in terms of classrooms and spaces in our schools. We can develop that in borough, for example, social, emotional, mental health resources, both primary and secondary, to try and keep more children with SEND in Bracknell Forest to save sending them out of the borough where they can therefore have better quality of life. So there's a huge amount going on. I think if I would give one good reason what could have been done to prevent it, I think it would have actually been that early stage realisation of the complexity of moving from one format to the other, coupled to the fact, I think, probably having some more detailed performance data. But there is no complacency. We recognise that the inspection told the story as it was. We accept that, but work has continued apace before, during and now on the inspection to put this right and make sure that we have an SEND service fit for purpose and one which will actually meet the needs of children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr Barnard. Councillor Mrs Temperton, do you have a supplementary
First,
question?
I'd like to thank Councillor Dr Barnard for a very full and honest response to that. And also to thank for the involvement of parents and carers now, because I think that makes it much more, they've gone through this journey and they know what needs to be done as well. My question really is that it's good to have performance data published, and I asked if they could actually be published maybe in the quarterly review so we can keep on this, because I knew there was an issue, but I didn't realise how much, and I do feel ashamed of it. And I think we all do. And I think by having published information before us on key performance indicators, we would be able to either celebrate that this is all going well now, or say, what can we do to improve this earlier? So I'm asking if that's a possibility.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much, Councillor Mrs Temperton. It's the intention both within the quarterly operation reporting of the Directorate, but I think also in terms of the Chief Executive's overall summary of data will come that forward. I should have said during my response as well, I also wanted to thank you, Councillor Mrs Temperton, for your involvement during recruitment processes, because you will know that through performance management and recruitment that we were highlighting the concerns. And I think my biggest regret in all of this is that once we'd identified the issue, that the circumstances we faced, the trajectory on meant that it would take time to put right. But I want to give my complete commitment to the council this evening that we're on the case, we're working there, because I said earlier that I was very, very proud that, you know, pretty well all our schools have got are outstanding. We now need to make sure that those schools are delivering a high quality education for all children with additional needs, be it in Bracknell Forest or out of borough, and within time, hopefully within the borough. But no, in terms of performance data, we need it, we will have it, and it will be very publicly available for appropriate scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dr Barnard. Moving on to the second question set out at item 11 at the beginning of your agenda and on the screen. Councillor Mrs Temperton, are you content for us to take your question as read?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Temperton. Councillor Dr Barnard.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mr Templeton, for your question, Madam Mayor. I hope my answer to this one will be somewhat shorter, but I fear that might provoke additional question, but there we go. Bracknell Forest, we don't actually hold data on managed moves between schools in Bracknell Forest, but we do hold data on managed moves from Bracknell Forest mainstream schools to College Hall. For members present who are not maybe familiar with the managed moves process, this is where, to avoid a permanent exclusion from one school, discussions take place either between that school and another mainstream school in Bracknell Forest to see if, with support, that child can move from one to the other. And having been associated with a secondary school for a number of years, it's a very positive way in some cases of breaking some of the issues causing concern to actually allow, for want of a better word, a student to make a fresh start in a second school. The general criteria around that are discussed between the schools. There is some input, professional input and support from the borough as part of a fair access panel, but generally speaking, it's for the two schools to agree this based on availability of places in the required year group and a perception as to whether that school can provide support, which is why sometimes you see school-to-school movements generally taking place to schools where maybe they're undersubscribed in particular year groups so that there is capacity to take there. However, we do have some data, Councillor Mrs Templeton, and that is the since September 2021, the managed moves to College Hall. That's our pupil referral unit, that's our special support unit there. So from Garfield College, there have been 10 such moves, East Hampstead Park Community School 3 and Brackenhale 2.
Councillor Mrs Templeton, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, I do, because I really wanted to see whether this was equitable, whether all the schools who were giving children were also taking them, because I have some suspicion that this is not happening. And I do know that academies can actually refuse to take a child or take some people in. And I'm just quite concerned that if a school has space, do they get more children coming to that school because they have space, or can they refuse to take that? And if they do have more and more children, these are often children with challenging behaviour. Let's not get, it's often children with challenging behaviour. And they're moved into a school, and often those children can actually influence the other children in there. So I'm just asking, and I know you're looking at me with a glare, so I've got to quickly say it. Can a school with space refuse, and what happens if the placement fails?
Well, I mean, if we go, I mean, of course, schools are locally managed. They have a degree of autonomy, and that autonomy goes actually back, I suspect, to around about 2005-06 as part of, the local management for school, when effectively there was a greater separation of the local authority. They can refuse for two reasons. One is if they don't have the space, and so therefore, if you have a school where that particular year group is full. And if you remember, I think it was the then Labour government that basically put in place, for good reason, class sizes across the piece, and therefore we have the planned admission numbers. But secondly, they can also refuse if they don't believe they can meet the needs of that student. Now, the general rule of thumb is that if a young person goes on a managed move from one mainstream school to a second, and then comes up against, shall we say, the sanction that ultimately could be up and to including permanent exclusion or a long fixed term exclusion where alternative provision is sought, they're unlikely to be offered a place in a third mainstream school. But having spoken at length with Debbie Smith, that's the officer in the council, and one head teacher, it is very much down to two schools deciding whether they wish to make this move. But academies, as local authority schools, can say no if they don't believe they can meet the needs. And I am aware that some schools believe that they disproportionately take a number of pupils, but I would say it's generally speaking, because those schools, and I'm talking here particularly about the secondary sector, where they said are better suited and better able to meet the needs of those students. And I don't think it's fair to say that it's done with any, difficult intent. I think it is done because I'm trying not to talk about a particular school here, because I do want to say that particular school does an excellent job, but fundamentally it is down to schools agreeing, unless it is a managed move to the pupil referral unit, where quite clearly that is a function of the local authority to support that move.
Thank you, Councillor Barnard. I think you've answered that question. And Councillor Mrs Templeton, I was just very keen to hear your question because I knew it would be interesting. No, Councillor Mrs Templeton, no. It's probably the eyesight. Moving on now to the third question set out at item 11 at the beginning of your agenda on the screen. Councillor Bidwell, are you content for us to take your question as read?
Yes, I am, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Birch, I understand you are going to respond. Oh, no.
Thank you,
No,
Madam
that's
Mayor.
all right.
It's
Thank you,
Councillor Hayden. I'm going to start the response. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, there's two areas of support for vulnerable residents have been conflated in the question. The first area, the £150, is actually it's a council tax rebate, not grant, it's a rebate, which is actually being provided for by the government in Whitehall. The council itself is actually making the payments on their behalf. The other area which Councillor Bidwell refers to is really the hardship fund, which is an entirely separate area. And it's also an area where Bracknell Forest have had an initiative for some time. And it falls firmly under the portfolio of Councillor Birch. So it's now handing over to Councillor Birch to take over the rest of the question, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Dale Birch. Picking up on the point made by Councillor Hayden, the local welfare scheme is actually a discretionary scheme. It's not statutory as such, and not all councils provide it. This administration chose some time ago to offer a form of hardship grant. At the start of 2021, Bracknell Forest Council operated two separate schemes for those unable to meet the basic needs in a crisis. And that's the important point to understand. The Home Emergency Grant and the Local Crisis Grant Scheme. But the criteria were limited and the take-up was poor. Recognising the gap in October 2021, the new local welfare scheme was launched, and since that point, take-up has increased. The scheme exists to support those in financial crisis and who may not be able to meet their essential urgent living expenses. Support is given towards things like gas and electricity, basic white goods and furnishings and so forth, and in a number of cases, referrals to the food bank or a purchase of supermarket vouchers. The core allocated budget is just over £25,000, actually £25,080 is in the budget, but this has been supplemented since 2020 by one-off grant allocations from other government funding, such as the Household Support Fund and the DEFRA funding. And a carry forward of 25,000 has been requested for us going forward into 22-23. And more than £30,000 of emergency support has been issued by our welfare team in 21-22, and more than 70% being spent since the new scheme went live. And Madam Mayor, can I take this opportunity to point out that and draw attention to our welfare team under Sharon Warner, who are doing an amazing job and have been doing so for quite a long time, and both before COVID and during COVID. And they remain committed to ensuring that our most vulnerable at these points of crisis get the right support that they need. It's important to explain that the fund exists in addition to other forms of support. And that's an important point to make, because you may qualify for another support, which then means you don't qualify for this support, etc. These are additional forms of support which were in place during the pandemic, such as members will remember the COVID winter grant, the COVID council tax support grant, and the household support fund part 1, and now we've got part 2. It's like a movie, etc. Moving on, part of the question was why were people denied? I've alluded to that, but each application is dealt with on its own merits, and that's important. And not everybody will have qualified for this particular form of grant. And as I've alluded to, there are a number of others that they may have had access to. So it's not a grant that gets given out 100%. You have to conform with criteria. The scheme has been promoted and shared with relevant key stakeholders, both internally within the council and externally within organisations such as Pilgrim Hearts, the Citizens Advice Bureau, Job Centre Plus, and within a broader set of teams within Bracknell Forest that support our families and most vulnerable. And their role is to identify an individual or a household in crisis, and where there is no funding stream currently, that's their job, is to identify and meet that as an urgent need. We don't go out and market and to promote as an individual in a scheme as such, because this is about a targeted fund, a targeted grant, and the people, the experts that deal with our most vulnerable clients, they have all had the training, they have all had the awareness, and they draw on whatever is the most appropriate one of these funds or pots or grants. So it's not marketed out there, here's a pot of money, anyone can apply, etc. It's done in a very structured and very careful way, because it is a targeted grant. So, and we, as I say, as an administration, have been adding additional funding for emergency use for quite some time now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Bidwell, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, more of a comment, really, I suppose. Firstly,
could we have a question, please, Councillor Bidwell?
Well, I still haven't got any numbers for who has used and who has not used the funds.
We've had 241 applications.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending this meeting, and I now declare the meeting closed.